So when Valerien Ismael'i came to Lask, most experts and fans were pretty perplexed because his previous CV wasn't exactly convincing, and the footsteps he had to fill, Oliver Glasner's, were pretty big. But all the skepticism went away just after a few weeks, because he has started to transform the team's football philosophy without breaking some of the basic principles that held the squad together. So he opted for continuing to play the 3-4-3 formation, which was the main one at the club for a long time by then, but he turned around the main concept. He quickly transformed a counter-attack, possession-less based team into a team that focuses on smart controlled possession with unusual passing solutions. And it worked really well in a collective that knew each other for years and played side by side for several seasons by then. Another thing that was remarkable was how well he could determine players' abilities that were previously unknown by his predecessors. So based on his observations, he managed to adjust the roles and tasks for some of the key players, which helped them to discover and realize their potential even more. And he showed himself as a coach who enjoyed working with set pieces a lot. Yes, Lask has always been a team with strong set pieces, but Ismael brought in some bold, fresh, new ideas that worked really well. All of this way of working and philosophy was seen in his later stints, although in different proportions, at Barnsley, which was rather successful, and at West Brom, which was not as successful. But this way, he managed to create the strongest Lask that we have seen in years. And by February or March 2020, it seemed like a strong title contender, and they could really compete with Salzburg, which was a thing actually unseen in the Austrian league for a long time now. They went into lockdown being first in the first place, but unfortunately what happened later was not really a strictly football-related story, as we know. There were lockdown trainings that were prohibited, points deduction, and Ismael was selected as a scapegoat at the club. Even though we all understand that decisions like this are not really taken at the coaching staff level. But if we scratch these last months of his stint, all in all, it was a very strong time from a footballistic point of view.
I think there are going to be very, very curious eyes cast towards Besiktas from many West Brom fans. You know, it's not long since Ismael left West Brom, and it just felt like it was destined never to work out. I mean, Ismael came in promising a brand of high energy, high tempo football, and for the first 6 or 7 weeks we did see that. There was a game at Peterborough where there was a feeling that for the first time an opposition manager had worked out how to combat West Brom's strengths. Now, West Brom won that game, but it was to set a tone for the rest of the season that all of a sudden coaches, managers had realised that if you stopped West Brom playing the way they wanted, they weren't able to react to that. Now, Ismael was very wedded to a 3-4-3 formation, 3 centre-halves, 4 midfielders, 3 attackers, and he stuck to that no matter who the opposition were, no matter what the opposition's strengths or weaknesses were, and no matter who he had available for selection. And the frustrating thing was, watching it, is that there were games where you could see we didn't need 3 centre-halves, or we didn't need 3 up front, or maybe we needed an extra man in midfield. And I think it was that tactical inflexibility, you could even call it stubbornness, that ultimately cost Ismael's job. And, you know, there was one strategy during games, and that was to see how things pan out, bring on a sub after 60-odd minutes, and then see how that works out. And quite often it was a like-for-like change. So you'd get a midfielder going off for a midfielder, or a striker going off for another striker. There was never really any adjustment to the style of play. And I think one of the biggest things that we'll be looking at and observing from afar is whether Ismael has maybe learnt those lessons, maybe whether he's evolved as a manager. Because I do think there is a manager there who could do really well if he allowed himself a little bit more, if he expanded his range of strategies and the way he approaches games, I do think the potential is there. But it was just so frustrating at West Brom to see a decent set of players who, by the way, did let him down on occasion. You know, they weren't perfect by any stretch, the players. And I think they can take a certain amount of responsibility for his failings. But ultimately, Ismael felt like the wrong manager for the wrong club at the wrong time. And, you know, fingers crossed for him, it works out better in Turkey.